No Fluff, Just Stuff talks in St. Louis, generating images with stable diffusion, a bit about UConn basketball, both the men and the women. I miss the earthquake, and the usual collection of silly tweets, toots, and other posts. Welcome to Tales from the Jar Side. Welcome, my name is Ken Cousin. This is my free weekly newsletter, Tales from the Jar Side, video version. On this channel, we try to explain not only what went on in the world of technology, but why and what parts you can safely ignore, if any. Let's do the subtitle this week, which says, I was walking in the jungle and saw a lizard on its hind legs telling jokes. I said, that lizard is really funny. No, a local replied, that's not a lizard. It's a stand-up chameleon. Yeah, okay, sorry. Moving on. Welcome, fellow jarheads, to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter for the week of April 1st through 7th, 2024. This week I taught my Managing Your Manager course on the O'Reilly Learning Platform. Oh, it says No Fluff, Just Stuff virtual workshop. Oops. Anyway, it was on O'Reilly. And I did my regular large-scale and open-source computing class at Trinity College in Hartford. I also went to and gave 5 talks at the No Fluff, Just Stuff event, not virtual, No Fluff, Just Stuff event in St. Louis, Missouri. Regular readers of and listeners to, and of course, video viewers of this newsletter are affectionately known as jarheads and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and attractive than the average newsletter reader or listener or viewer. If you wish to become a jarhead, feel free to subscribe using the button on the newsletter or on the YouTube channel. Always welcome there. Tales from the Jar Side. It's youtube.com/@Tales from the Jar Side, which is better than the newsletter link, which is kencousin.substack.com, so that one's not nearly as obvious. At any rate, let's go on. So the first No Fluff, Just Stuff event of the season occurred in St. Louis. This is what the No Fluff tour looks like. If you go to nofluffjuststuff.com, you see here that there are events for the conferences listed here, and we go pretty much all over the country. The St. Louis one is now gone. It's in the past. So here's Boston and Madison, Wisconsin. UberConf is a destination conference. Minneapolis, Northern Virginia's Reston, and then one's in December. And there may be more added. These are the virtual workshops that I'm doing an upgrade to modern Java on the 17th, for example, as well as the webinars. So at any rate, this time I did 5 talks at the conference, and I put in here that the 2-day events are tough. The 3 days are more normal, the idea being you do half a day on Friday after lunch, and then all day Saturday and all day Sunday, and the most you do is 4 talks in a day that way. So there'll be like 2 on Friday afternoon and then 4 Saturday, 4 Sunday. If you did them all, which, sometimes people do, Venkat, and I've done them all as well, then that's pretty tiring, but it's doable. The 2-day events, however, are only, 2 days, but both days have 5 talks in a day, and that's what this St. Louis one was. So I was only there for 1 day, gave 5 talks, and just in on Thursday night, out on Saturday morning. So that's a lot to do. And of course, you're operating on adrenaline much of that day, and the first event of the year is always a bit of a challenge because you're giving several talks that you haven't done before. Not that you don't know what you're going to talk about, but you don't really have a good sense of the timing. You also don't know what typical questions will be asked because it could be almost anything. And the size of the audience will vary rather dramatically. You have no idea how that's going to go. So on Friday, the organizers scheduled 3 AI talks that basically use the same set of material. The one called Calling AI from Java, and then 2 called Practical AI Tools for Java Developers. And I didn't really intend for those to be separate talks. So I had to come up with a way to make 3 talks worth of material out of that. And all the talks on the No Fluff Tour are an hour and a half. They're not 60 minutes, they're 90. But hey, in the hands of a lesser presenter, this might be a problem, as we say. Oh, that gets a rim shot. Yeah. the truth is, I have plenty to talk about for a variety of reasons I haven't really gotten into. But after all, I've been making AI and Java videos on the YouTube channel for the past, I don't know, 4 to 6 months, and they're adding up. So I've got plenty to say, but still, it was a challenge figuring out how to do it. The fourth AI-related talk was on the LangChain4j framework, which I really like. I'm a big fan of that framework. And it gave me the first opportunity I've had to really speak about that one. So that was fun. And then the last one of the day was just on latest Java features, stuff up through and including Java 21 and a little bit about 22, although I didn't say a whole lot about that. So at any rate, it's all listed here, and you could see the list of topics and stuff, but I'm going to move on. I did manage to include demos that involve not only ChatGPT from OpenAI, but Claude and Gemini. And I think I did a Mistral one, or at least I alluded to one. Mistral, incidentally, has the same API as OpenAI itself, as ChatGPT. So if you've got it working for one, you can have it working for the other. You just need a different registration key and pick the model. That's about it. So it's interesting that way. So really, all you need is to treat these services as though they were RESTful web services. And in Java, we deal with RESTful web services all the time. So a lot of that came down to just having a networking library and a good old JSON parser. Okay, so I did actually say my one rather surprising moment for me anyway is, speaking of adrenaline, I was so much enjoying having something to talk about that I'd actually presented before, that latest Java stuff, that I kind of kept going and blew right through the ending of the day, where the deadline, we were supposed to end at 6:15 p.m. and I finally took a breath around 6:30 and still kept going for another 5 minutes. I thought we were supposed to end at 6:30. And if half the room had gotten up and started walking out, I would have realized it, but I missed it, and they were into it, so we had a good time, but go figure. As they say, there's an old saying, you never want to be a doctor's first patient or their last one, for obvious reasons. And likewise, this was the first No Fluff event of the season, so the speakers are all still trying to figure out how these talks are going to go. At the last event of the season, because you do a lot of the same talks over and over and over again, you know what you're doing. You may be getting a little bored by that point. So you probably want to be somewhere in the middle. Of course, these days when we only have about half a dozen events throughout the year, that's not enough to get bored. So we'll see. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. Now, last week I had a bit of a rant about retrieval augmented generation. Kept calling it retrieval automated, but it's retrieval augmented generation, abbreviated RAG, which is a mechanism that allows you to add your own data to AI tools. So you could put that in the context and ask questions about it. And while RAG is fairly complicated, it's also the same algorithm over and over again, just with a variety of choices of tools. And people have a tendency to want to talk about it, as the best way to get their own information into the analysis done by an AI tool. My point I made last week was the context window used to be really small. The memory, the RAM, if you will, that goes with these AI tools, it used to be 2K or 4K tokens. The rough conversion is 750 words is about 1,000 tokens. So it's a roughly 3/4 ratio there. And back when you only had 2K tokens, you could use up those words fairly quickly, especially if you give it an elaborate input prompt. Well, once you had 4K, it was a lot better. And then ChatGPT 4 went to 16K and even 32K, and it seemed like a lot. Then Claude 2 actually raised the bar to 100,000 tokens, which is a lot. And then, of course, GPT-4 matched that. And then they raised it again with Claude 3 to 200,000 tokens, and GPT eventually matched that as well. And then Google Gemini came out, and Gemini 1.5 has announced they have a token window of 1 million tokens, which is like, wow. You could fit a lot of stuff in there. And of course, rumor has it they're working on one with 10 million tokens, but again, I'll believe it when I see it. So what I did last week is I took one of my books, the Help Your Boss Help You book, the one that I refer to as Managing Your Manager. I took the PDF, I ran it through a PDF reader, PDF API from Apache, which extracted all the text from it and loaded loaded it into the context window, and my 60-some thousand word book took about 80,000 tokens, about what I expected. But 80,000 tokens fit comfortably into the context window, and I was able to ask for summarizations and things like that, which worked really well. Well, I did get some pushback, nothing major, but I did get some people going, that is an expensive way to solve that problem. And those tokens cost money. And they do. And the input tokens tend to cost either half or a third of what the output tokens cost, but the input tokens are where you load things up. And here I'd used up 80,000 of them. It sounded like a lot. So somebody, when I was doing my talk at No Fluff, said, well, what did that actually cost you? And I went looking in Gemini and I couldn't find it. And I'm like, this is weird. So I went on the Discord server where they do support to some degree. And somebody pointed out that, in fact, Gemini 1.5 is still in beta, and that meant they weren't charging at all. It was free. So, hey, I could load 1 million tokens if I want, and it wouldn't cost me anything for about, 3 more weeks. And then that'll be it, because I did get an email from Google saying that they will be announcing their pricing model soon, which I presume means next week at their Google Cloud Next conference, and that pricing will start May 1st. Now, I did go into GPT. I went to openai.com and their pricing model. And as I mentioned here, the way they price it, the input tokens cost $10 per million tokens. So $1 per 100,000 tokens. I put in 80,000 tokens. Yeah, it cost me about 80 cents, or it would, roughly. Now, that's not a lot, for one talk, but are you going to want to do that for every request? Well, probably not. So it is an expensive way to do things if you're going to do them a lot. But if you're only going to do it occasionally, it's not too bad. Okay, next section. Oh, I got to do a really bad dad joke. This took some prep, actually. So several of the speakers went out to dinner that night, Friday night, and we all went to an Indian restaurant. And I'm like, oh boy, I got my chance to use this bad joke. So I purchased the flatbread for the table, and it shows up, and it looked vaguely like this image. There's, what the Indian bread looks like. So when everybody was there and there was a pause in the conversation, I said, oh, this restaurant is very secretive about their bread recipes. In order to get this, I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. See, this time I even embedded the rim shot right in the newsletter there. I got the groans that I was looking for. And what I had to confess, what I had to tell them, is I've been sitting on that gag for months. I needed a crowd. I needed an Indian restaurant. I just needed the right opportunity. And when we all went to an Indian restaurant, I went, here it is. So that's why I purchased the naan for the table, just so I could tell that gag. And yeah, it's sad. But hey, I am a dad. I should go for dad jokes. All right, moving on. The technical thing I did, in addition to giving the talks, is I looked into Stable Diffusion. Now, Stable Diffusion this is at stability.ai, has their REST web service. This is Stability AI. It's got the models for generating images and generating very limited video as well. So they talk about it, and their model that they produce is called Stable Diffusion. Now, when Stable Diffusion XL came out about 6 months ago, I did some coding with the API in order to access it. And that brings me to this section. And there's a generate and an upscale and editing the images, and not sure what the control part is. But under the generate part, since I worked with this, they came out with something called Stable Image Core. And if you look at Stable Image Core, what you discover is they've changed everything. The entire API changed. It used to be there was a whole bunch of JSON objects that you would submit as part of your request, and you had to map those to records and do the networking and everything. And now they said, no, actually, you put in your headers. Let me magnify this a bit so you can see. You put in your authorization header, but now the request is not application/JSON anymore. It's multi-part form data of all things. So the accept header, you say image/star if you just want the data back directly, which is what I want to get the image back as a byte array. But multi-part form data, how do you submit multi-part form data? And if you scroll down, they tell you, okay, you got to put in the header, the authorization header, and the content type. And here's the key moment. It says the content type of the request body, do not manually specify this header, multi-part form data. Your HTTP client library will automatically include the appropriate boundary parameter for you. And I'm like, no, not necessarily it won't. What am I supposed to do there? And then specify the accept header in the prompt and you're done. So I kind of struggled with that. It was not obvious to me how I was going to do it because you have to put one in. If you don't put one in, you get back an error message saying, where's your content type header? You have to specify it. So what eventually I wound up doing, and here it is in just straight Java, just the Java library with no additional support, is I set up an HTTP client with a builder, and there's the URL, that's the endpoint, and there's my authorization header and the accept header. The content type you specify, and you add in this boundary parameter. You just pick a name, like my boundary. And in the post request, you separate out the parameters using -- my boundary and put in content disposition for form data, name equals prompt, name equals output format, which is PNG, and all this white space and everything. And then you submit it and you get your answers back and you have to deal with it. And I'm like, okay, I could do it, but that is hardly an elegant solution. So I did a bit more exploring, meaning I asked ChatGPT-4, it doesn't seem like a good way to go. Is there an alternative? And it reminded me that that's not the only HTTP client library out there. And what you can use instead is the Apache HTTP client library, which back on the newsletter, I think I put a link to. Scrolling down a bit here. Yeah, this is the Apache HTTP components project, and they have their own mechanism in here, but allows you to specify all this stuff in all sorts of nice ways, and this is quite mature and powerful. So what I wound up using was a closable HTTP client from, as you can see, org.apache.hc, HTTP components, client 5, etc. And by putting these headers in to the post with the set header, I'm fine, and then used a multi-part entity builder to put in the prompt and the output format, and that takes care of everything for me. That sets up a boundary. I don't even know what it did. I suppose I should have logged the request, but I didn't bother. And once you plug that in, then it's just a question of executing the post request and saying with the response, check the status code, and then let's grab the rest of that is just making a file name for the images and generating it. And in fact, my test here, which I was using just to demonstrate it, was cats playing gin rummy because dogs playing poker has been done. So let me run it again, see what image I get this time, because, of course, it's different each time. And you see that it generated this file. I gave it a convention, a naming convention to follow based on the prompt. And here's the new picture. Wow, that's a little weird. It looks like triplets and twins, doesn't it? Okay, I think I like the first one I got better, but they are playing. Now, in the other one, the cards looked a little weird, and these look pretty good. They're all red, which again is a little strange. But cats, they could be cheating. I have no idea how that's working, and maybe this is, I'm done making excuses. At any rate, it worked. So back to the newsletter. So I had fun with that, and it did work, and I put the little snippet in the newsletter, and this is the one that I got the first time I ran it. I like that a little better, especially the one like dressed as the dealer and everything, but so be it. Okay, let's move on. This is an unusual year for the University of Connecticut basketball teams. Usually the women are a juggernaut. They just destroy everybody, and it's a given that they'll make the Final Four, and the question is whether they'll win the title or not. And the men, every once in a while, have a really good team, and you just hope for the best. They hopefully they'll go far in the tournament. Well, this year is exactly the opposite. Last year, the men got on this enormous roll. They were so good and just marched through the tournament and won every game by double figures. It was amazing. So this year, the defending champion, they lost a lot of players, and yet they were really good this year too. And right now they have stormed through the tournament again. The last game, the one that was going on Friday night when I was on the, Saturday night, when I was on the plane flying home. They had a TV in the plane inside the seats and everything. So I was able to watch them win that game as well. And that was the closest game of the tournament for them. And they only won by 14, So it's really nice. The title game is tonight, and hopefully they'll do well there. Meanwhile, the women have struggled all season long. Now, part of that is they've been absolutely devastated by injuries. They only were able to field a team of 8 players total, and pretty much they played a 7-deep rotation, and that was it. But, I mean, I saw them earlier in the season. I mentioned in the newsletter a few weeks ago, my wife and I went to a game in the Hartford Civic Center, and they didn't look good. I mean, the team they were playing wasn't very good, so they won pretty easily. But they didn't look like a Final Four team, I got to say. But they put it together at the end of the season. They marched into the Final Four. Good for them. Then they played Iowa, and they almost had a shot at the end to win it. But there was a questionable offensive foul call. They turned the ball over to Iowa, basically ran out the clock, and that was that. So, I mean, it was a little sad because it would have been nice to at least get a shot off at the end just to see if they have a chance. But honestly, they exceeded my expectations anyway. I didn't think they were that good. Well, the big tournament finale was yesterday, and South Carolina was just the juggernaut that they had appeared to be. They destroyed everybody. Iowa gave them a run, but the outcome was not really in doubt. It was definitely clear who the better team was. So be it. I enjoyed that. Now, if the men lose tonight, which they should not do, but if they do, I threatened here to skip the Dev Nexus conference the rest of the week. But seeing as how my wife is coming to Atlanta with me to visit friends, I'm not sure it'll be so easy for me to get out of that. So we'll see. Okay. Of course, while I was gone, there was an earthquake, and I was going to say New England, but it was actually in northern New Jersey, and we just felt it up in Connecticut. I wasn't there. I missed it entirely. My wife told me about it. She felt it. The whole house shook briefly, and she went down to the basement to check that everything was okay, and it was. She didn't even know what it was, and we're not accustomed to getting earthquakes up here. But now it was a 4.8. It hit New Jersey, and we got the rest of it. And fine, but so be it. Of course, now there's an eclipse today. The eclipse already happened. We are far away from totality, so we got a little partial, but not a lot. People were trying to ascribe meaning to the fact of having an eclipse followed, or rather an earthquake followed by an eclipse, when the fact of the matter is that there are thousands of earthquakes a year, and eclipses happen every 18 months, major, complete, total solar eclipses, just different parts of the world. So reading a lot of meaning into that's kind of tough. I did point out that the epicenter was near one of Trump's golf courses in New Jersey, and of course he compared the criticism he feels he's been receiving to the persecution of Jesus. So, hey, if you're looking for deep meaning about all these natural phenomenon, draw your own conclusions. I didn't get to see much of the eclipse, but I did collect a few of the good posts and gags and stuff, so look for that in next week's newsletter. Now, the newsletter was already starting to run long, so I didn't really get into this, but I just thought I'd mention for those who are paying attention to this sort of thing, I do view chess very much for me as a spectator sport. I follow what's going on, and I watch a lot of the commentators and stuff. Well, the candidates tournaments for both the men and the women are taking place these days, and they're in Toronto, Canada. So the same time zone for me, and that makes it easier, I suppose. Although, again, I mostly watch the commentary afterwards, see what happened. One thing that's notable this time is the Indian kids who were inspired by, Vishy Anand winning the world title years ago are now old enough to be in the tournament themselves. Pragnananda is there, and Vidit is there, and there's at least one other. Gukesh is there as well. So it's really impressive to watch them growing into it. And there's other young players as well. Well, Pragnananda is particularly significant because he is in the men's tournament, and his sister Vaishali is in the women's tournament as well. So, and they both are fascinating players. The sister especially is incredibly aggressive and sacrificing pieces and trying all sorts of bizarre stuff. And Prag himself did a wild opening in the third round. They both wound up winning in round 3. So it was fun. So I'm headed to India for GIDS at the end of this month, and I know they're going to be a topic of conversation there. So I'll talk more about it later. Let's do our tweets and toots. So this, I was trying to conjure the The young Frankenstein reference. Where wolf, where castle. You know, there wolf, there castle. Why are you talking like that? I thought you wanted to. No, I don't want to. Suit yourself. I'm easy. You know, Marty Feldman. And of course, that wonderful movie. So somebody had posted, what happens if you put a werewolf on the moon? It's a great question. Probably the best question ever asked. Well, that's a little strong, but it's an interesting thought. You know, if the full moon is what makes a werewolf appear, or transition, I suppose, you know, from a person into a werewolf, then if you're already on the moon, is it technically full all the time? Is it only full if the sunlight is out? Is there a certain threshold of sunlight? What happens if you walk into a shadow? Does that matter on Earth, whether you're in a shadow or not? What if you're indoors? I mean, I don't know the rules. You know, maybe these rules are all worked out and I just don't really know the details. But I would think that there would be a way to resolve this given various models and assumptions, you know. So if you happen to know, please put something in the comments and I'll follow up. This one was a post that said, are you joining us, Adam's kids? Or at least I put that in there. It said, the neighbor's kids challenged us to a water fight. I'm in, just waiting for the water to boil. What? Yeah, that'd be Wednesday Addams all over, wouldn't it? Yeah, that'd be, assuming she didn't go for the acid. Next one, high-speed rail isn't. This says, it's actually the trains which are high-speed. The rails are pretty much stationary. Yeah, okay. My son and probably my wife are the sort of pedantic people who would really get into that. What it reminds me of is that the Ruby on Rails framework was created by David Heinemeier Hansson, and he was thinking of Ruby, the programming language, on rails, meaning the high-speed European trains. He was not thinking of American trains. This is what I always tell people, is there's no way an American would have come up with that reference. No American is going to create Java on Amtrak. It'd be slow and problematic and derail every once in a while and things like that. Yeah, I'm not sure that would be the reference you want here. So step right up. This said, for Godzilla, every city is walkable. I suppose the first time, but then it's crushed. Is it a city anymore? So only once. Wait, were those connected? And speaking of Godzilla, this said earthquake had felt in New York City. What the heck is happening? Oh, I think you know. And there's the picture of Godzilla. So connecting him again. And even one more for the road here. It said, fortune teller turns over a tarot card that shows an earthquake in New York City just days before a total solar eclipse. Me, is that good? Well, I mean, it's a theme anyway, one way or another. Robert McNeese, by the way, is a fun Mastodon feed to follow. He's actually a physicist and usually tweets about physics, history, and other related events. This one was from the mostly harmless Mastodon feed. It said, I don't usually pick up hitchhikers, but this poor guy looks like he's running late to hockey practice. He already has his mask on. Yeah. I suppose that deserves a rim shot. It said, that's why I pronounce Jason, J-S-O-N, like Jason and not Jason like most people do. I like imagining a guy with a hockey mask and a machete while I'm coding this stuff, right? So I suppose I should put in there. There's Jason. See, that's the idea. There you go. Okay, moving on. Now suffer, which says turns me into a frog. Now suffer, me chilling on a leaf. Which wait, me experiencing happiness for the first time in my life. Which wait, no. I think it would get boring pretty fast, and I'm not wild about eating insects, but you know, sooner or later, some princess is going to come by with a kiss, I suppose, right? I mean, that's how it's supposed to work. This one, do the math. Said statistically, 6 out of 7 dwarfs aren't happy. No shot. That's true. There's Sleepy and Doc and all the others, but that's just science, right? And then finally, the fact that Easter and Trans Day of Visibility both fell on March 31st did result in this nice juxtaposition. I support our trans peeps. And yes, I thought that was very good. And I also definitely support our trans peeps. I don't know any personally, or if I do, I don't know I do. But I support, I think, at least 3 of them as on Patreon, as trans creators. And I have learned about a whole world that I would not otherwise have encountered from them. Although I follow them more for the interesting topics they talk about rather than the trans issues. But it's valuable in both ways. So have a great week, everybody. This week I've got the DevNexus conference. That's here. Let me grab this tab here. This will do it. DevNexus.com. I was going to say it was a bad color choice, but this is April 9th through 11th in Atlanta. Now, April 9th is just a workshop day, and I'm not giving a workshop, so we're flying down on the 9th. I have a couple of talks on Wednesday, and then I'll just attend on Thursday. The Null Pointers are a band of Java developers, and emphasis on developers, not band there. Some of the players are pretty good. At any rate, we have a rehearsal Tuesday night, our one rehearsal a year, basically, and then we have a gig on Thursday. No, I said it wrong. We have a rehearsal on Tuesday night and a gig on Wednesday night. So if you happen to be there, we'll be playing at the JCP party, the Java Community Process Party, and maybe we'll see you there. So, I really should get to downloading lyrics and setting things up in time for that. So we'll see how that goes. But otherwise, it's going to be a relatively quiet week. So maybe, who knows, I'll have to do it from a hotel room, but maybe I can get that video taken care of that I've been planning to do for a few weeks now on sealed interfaces and records and accessing AI with that. So otherwise, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that or any of the other videos, and I will see you all next week.
Hey there, devs, it's time to tune in to Tales from the Jar, so let's begin. Java, Kotlin, and Spring, oh my. Cookie, Gradle, don't be shy. Tales from the Jar side, oh yeah. Crack open the code, let's take a ride. From design patterns to the latest trends, your weekly tech talks that never end.